Hey, friends, Thursday, 30th of October. Welcome to the 52nd Lazarus Symposium. And I'm delighted that you're joining me. I see we've got some good numbers coming into the room. In the green room, my beloved friend, George H. Lewis, astrologist, polymath, brilliant human being. And I'll bring him on momentarily. Just a little catch up on as to what I've been up to the last few short weeks. In the first instance, shout out to my beloved bestie, Sue Wong. I am, of course, using one of her palatial homes as the backdrop here to this symposium. Normally, these kind of grandiose backdrops are slides that you stick in on a green screen to make it look as though you're somewhere spectacular, where I am somewhere spectacular. I'm in Hollywood, somewhere near Los Feliz, I think it is. Happy to be here in California. Weather is sublime. To anyone who's in this part of the world, you'll know that. Despite the fact that we are clearly going through some extraordinary, to use my favorite term, psycho-civilizational turbulence. That's putting it politely. I would say it's closer to a maelstrom than a turbulence. But to be sure, the conversations I'm having with people all around the world, because that's my thing, is constantly moving, constantly traveling, constantly meeting, constantly talking to humans, good humans. And that's the New Earth Network. And as you know, through Lazarus, it means very brilliant minds, thought leaders, people at the very frontier of human inquiry on the one hand. On the other hand, good humans, sovereign fellows all around the world, men and women of the living soil who constitute the body politic of the New Earth movement, which is thundering along in different parts of the globe. I just came back from a incredible 2.5-week excursion in the Aegean Sea. Some of you will have looked in and seen that. Had my bestie, Scott McKay, on the ship in the Mediterranean. Our producer there, Susan Shumsky, did a fantastic job setting in motion an incredible mythic tour of sacred sites, Ephesus in Turkey, Rhodes Island, incidentally, one of the places I've been to that I thought, yep, I could absolutely live here for the rest of my life. Just the most exquisite Greek island. We obviously were in Greece and did the Parthenon and all of that, and Egypt, where we did Giza, Alexandria, and Saqqara, a place that I have a 25-year relationship with. And it was a life-changing experience for the 53, I think, people who came from all around the world to join us on that cruise. Margot and Nand came in as well and was helping to facilitate. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And we will be doing some composites of the media filming that I did and get that out. We'll be promoting next year's cruise. We're going to do a similar one, except that I've asked that we bring Lebanon in with Baalbek. Anyone knows anything about archaeocosmology and about the titans and the giants of old and Nimrod, that's that aspect of the Genesis story, will know that Baalbek in Lebanon is one of the most extraordinary places, if not the epicenter of that Genesis point of humanity. I really want to get there. And obviously Jerusalem, which we were unable, for obvious reasons, to include on the tour this year. And then we intend to take that forward into Jordan, to the Wadi Rum Desert. And I can tell stories there, and also Petra, of course, and then across to Egypt again. I want to go through the Sinai Desert, spend time in Nuweiba, which holds very precious memories for me with the Bedouins, and travel through the Sinai Desert, the foothills of St. Catherine's Mount, where Moses descended with the tablets, a place again I've been to, and take it all the way through the Sinai Desert, through to Giza Plateau again, and then to the Nile, and do a Nile cruise down to some of the more extraordinary temples and artifacts of ancient Egypt. So that's being planned for later next year. We'll see how that plays forward. And there's also another retreat that we are looking at doing in in Asia, and which will encompass Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, ending up in Bali, where we'll bring people into New Earth Haven, and I'll arrange some spectacle at New Earth Haven at Akasha, at my home there. So just be warned, we'll be promoting those two mythic retreats for the course of next year. We're also going to be announcing in the new year the New Earth Tanasi Retreat Center. As many of you will know, we did the historic pioneering consecration event on the eve of Midsummer's Day this year in Tennessee at our land there, and we did the proclamation event on Midsummer's Day proper. We will be releasing that film. I've been promising that for a couple of months, but it's all in the timing. And that film is going to be coming out shortly. We'll be promoting what it is, the unveiling of the plans for the Tanasi Sanctuary. It's a residential sanctuary. It's going to be built forward as a world-class retreat center. It's going to have the Cherokee Medicine Equine Therapy Center based there as well, our New Earth Technologies Exposition, and hashtag Hemp Everything, New Earth Hemp Everything Expo Hub, as well as being planned there with the vertical greenhousing and what have you. So we really are looking to establish that New Earth Tanasi Residential Sanctuary Retreat Center as the beacon in Middle America to show what Sovereignty 101 looks like, what it means, and what 0 point social ecology and economy means, and what it's like to have a revolving door of retreats all year round with leading icons from around the world, our friends and family. As you know, I'm in the thick of that extraordinary network of world-leading scientists and thought leaders and astrologists and all the rest of it. So be prepared. We'll start a big campaign before Christmas leading into the new year. Midsummer's Day next year will be the big coming out, the cutting of the ribbon at New Earth Tanasi. That is the plan at this stage. Obviously, the world could end before then. Obviously, 3i Atlas could thunk into Mars and create some catastrophic cosmic event or some inordinately positive cosmic event. Who's to say? I am feeling very affirmative about the movement of the spheres and about what's taking place, especially in the context of this 3i Atlas phenomenon, which fortuitously everyone is now speaking about. So the kind of weird fringe stuff in Truth and Disclosure that people like myself have been talking about for many, many long years is now entering into the mainframe, whether you like it or not, whether we like it or not, whether it is comfortable or not to speak of these things. We are forced to speak of them. That is a good thing, and that heralds revelation itself. And that, of course, is what the Lazarus Symposium is directed toward. Let's bring on Cosmic Intel, monthly astrologist report with my beloved George H. Lewis. Christy, bring the man in.
Hello, thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. And, you know, it's so great, Sacha, when I listen to your travels around the ancient world. I mean, I've just spent the last 2 months in Greece, and I know we weren't able to co-create and coincide this time. I did follow you, and it's definitely, there's quite a lot of soul journey going on between us and our collective here, because tapping in, whether it's Baalbek or for me it was Delos, the birthplace of Apollo, really understanding these ancient ley lines, grid lines, and how we can reactivate them. It's really at the alpha and the omega of what we're doing. It's because they've all been so inverted, and we're bringing energy light back. And I do feel, as you say with your introduction, you know, that the 3i Atlas is an amazing opportunity for us to step into the new earth, into our own power. I mean, right now, as I speak with you, 3i Atlas is at the closest position to the sun, the perihelion. And within a few days' time, we're going to see a conjunction, not only with Venus, the great well, the one of the great benefic stars, planets in our solar system, but also a conjunction with Arcturus. And this is going to pick up massive potency and love. And I find it fascinating also that the Peace Initiative, now this is something to follow as we watch the trajectory of AI, of 3i Atlas, when we see the Peace Initiative in the Middle East, which was begun as 3i Atlas was at its closest point to Mars. To me, that smelt like the end of the Orion control system.
Wow. So slow down. That's huge. What you've just said is epochal. It's huge. Just delve into that a little bit more. So this phenomenon hurtling in, this
Yes.
greatest signature of the unknown in the material sense comes hurtling in from deep space.
Yes.
Comes to the closest point to Mars, the god of war, the archetype, and has some profound impact there to peace relations on Earth. How does that work?
Yeah, and we know this. We haven't discussed it overtly, but we know that Mars was once a living, breathing planet. And we know at some point during what I understand is the Orion Wars and the destruction of Malbec, and the Mars became uninhabitable because the plasma technology, the weaponry that was used, all but destroyed the entire planet. And so it's always carried this energy. As astrologers, we know that Mars, it's the lesser malefic. Obviously, Saturn is the great malefic. It's part of a negative control system connected to the Draco-Reptilian Orions. And now when peace comes in, and this is part of this moving of 3i Atlas, it was when Trump and the White Hats started to actually get peace anchored in the Middle East, which is the Babylonian center of permanent war. So we need to monitor this. And as it comes through to Venus, which is the opposite of Mars, which is that beautiful green love energy, the Christed light, conjoined Arcturus. And remember, when the United States birth chart was formed, we had both benefics, Venus and Jupiter, in conjunction with Arcturus on July 4th, 1776. So to me, we start to build up all this data. You look at the symbols. Like we've said before, when Baphomet came together in that great conjunction in 2020 in Capricorn, the plandemic was rolled out in the intention to absolutely run amok over the human species and put it into a dastardly, draconian system. And of course, the White Hats after that counterreacted that with different types of astrological connections and angles and alignments. So let's monitor AI Atlas as this entity, and it's not a comet. Yes, we've got 5 or 6 other comets supporting us. The comet Swan, which for me is the essence of grace, if you go to the Hopis and understand the great archetype of the Swan. We're looking at massive support coming from Arcturus, from the Pleiades. Let's even jump into the Pleiades for a moment. Isn't it interesting that it's called 3i Atlas? Who is Atlas? He is the father of the Pleiades. Atlas wed with an Oceanid, and formed the 7 sisters, which is the heart of the Pleiades system. And Uranus, literally next week, goes back for the final time in its cycle to connect 29 degrees Taurus, the anaretic degree, right on the Pleiades system. I get very excited by this. So all the fear-mongering of this could be a massive psyop, I get it. And my very left brain, human side can jump into that. But the greater me, the growing me, the more conscious me, this is a pivotal point for mankind's consciousness. This has been prophesied by the mystics, and you, with your contacts with the Hopi and all that, they've been banging on about this, haven't they, for decades, awaiting this time. And here we are. So let's monitor 3i Atlas as this feminine energy, and it's got green energy flowing out of it. If you see the trail that she leads is green heart Christed energy. And it's a multidimensional ship. It's not really solid, is it? We can't quite understand it. We can't totally trust that we're being shown. I get it. We have to remain not cynical, skeptical, but we have to have the open hearts to know this is an ushering in. And then, of course, on a planetary level, the planets profoundly support us in this journey. Every single outer planet changes sign and is at this dance between the anaretic degree, the last degrees, which is 29 degrees of the respective sign, and then from the spring next year, every single outer planet and even central planet in our solar system is at the beginning degrees. And
Right.
that is, and that forms, 2026 is a 1, now 2025 is a 9 in numerology. It's just perfect symmetry. You mentioned the music of the spheres. Thank you very much.
So this cosmic ballet that's playing out with all of these totems, comets, otherworldly phenomena, and inexplicable, ineffable phenomena, rather like the three-eye atlas, which any fool trying to say it's a this or a that is simply a fool. We don't know. And again, that's what's so wonderful about it, I think, the fact that it forces us into a reckoning with the unknowingness, and that wisdom stems from a deeper sense than just what we can patchwork in intellectually. We have to feel our way toward this. We're being forced into frequency attunement. We're having to sense our own hyperdimensional umbilical connection to this three-eye atlas phenomenon. Let's just use that as the totem because it is the most explicit one. But it is, in that sense, forcing a reckoning with us to sense through that hyperdimensional umbilical. We're connected to all things at all times. We are fractals of the universal alpha omega. And so you and I, through the sense, that deeper sense of connection to the three-eye atlas phenomenon, are likely to attune to the frequency set. Is it a friend or is it a foe? Is it neither? Is it both? For me, it is a symbol of reckoning that reduces us again to the understanding that we cannot compute things, we cannot process things. Certain things require that we move into a far more heightened octave of expression and of receptivity. Like, what are we able to intellectually delineate a phenomenon like three-eye atlas, or are we able to be taken on a journey by what it represents? And again, that draws us into the psionic intelligence, which is the upgrade. That is, by distinction, what the ascension is. It's forcing those of us who are ready for this to be pulled into the psionic connection to objects, to time, to motion, and so on and so forth. Speak to that.
No, it's really great because that segues beautifully in to the North Node in Pisces. So at this time, the North Node is always the area collectively which we have to lean into, which we're still lacking something of. And the North Node in Pisces, quickly, what are the archetype of Pisces? It's cosmic connection. It's the deep wellspring of the unconscious. It's the collective breath. It's Christ consciousness. Call it what you will. The North Node in Pisces, which will last for another 9 or 10 months before it always goes backwards, the nodes, into Aquarius. This is really the final push into that sense of out of Cartesian left brain understanding, you see.
And about bloody time.
It's about bloody time. And, from all of us in our community, we've been waiting for this for such a long time. And of course, again, the North Node in Pisces is the 4 stages of water. It's plasma, it's hyperdimensional physics that you speak about, the energy science. It is so much deeper, it's frequency. And, my humble way is practicing in the healing arts with frequency and sound. Only this year have I been able to remember some of the codes, maybe from a past life or from up there or from downstairs, to do with healing my students in water, because sound travels even more efficaciously through water than it does through air. And this is part of the North Node in Pisces. How do we find our waters? How do we, which we are 98%, the work of Veda Austin and many others, and Schoberger and all these different people who've preceded us, is we're understanding that water plays such a magnificent part, and that's out of that Newtonian false reality and into something far more dream state, which the ancients understood and were reconnecting with. So this three-eye atlas is allowing us to remember like a catalyst. It's a help speeding up process for we the people to get much closer to an understanding of our ontology and our reality.
Very good. So how might this energy of the North Node in Pisces relate to the restoration of balance, emotional, spiritual, and even physical health?
Well, it's interesting though, because let's take something even as practical as silver. Silver's been so deeply depressed, repressed, suppressed in the collective. Obviously, Venus also rules, silver rules money. And when you look at the archetype, and silver's the feminine, where gold's the masculine. And yes, gold's been undervalued and depressed deliberately. We know that. They both have. But silver more so, because if you read it symbolically, the feminine, the sacred feminine has been so suppressed. And so we are already, Japan has labeled, from what I understand, silver now at $125 per ounce. And apparently Russia's doing it at close to $200. Now we still in the West have it around 60, but there is the trajectory. And to me, that's a symbol, that's symbolic of the feminine coming back into play. And it's not so much linearity. And another factor, which is just beautiful to see, is Saturn is at the late degrees of Pisces for his last time due to the retrograde cycle. And when he moves into Aries, finally and fully in February next year, he is in his weakest part of the entire zodiac. Saturn, Satan, the old matrix. Whatever people say, whatever the mainstream media, which is Saturn's bullhorn, Saturn cannot continue the way he has. It is declining, Sabbatean, like you say.
Let's drill into that a little bit more, because again, it's something which we could skirt over, but actually it is so important, so axiomatic to how we flip into the new earth, the new paradigm. The Saturnian logic, all that is issued off and through Saturn has been in essence the bedrock of what we would call evil, what we would call shade, contrast, entropy, death, disease, misery, sorrow, grief, the trial of separation. Now we get into how the Saturnian mythos has also snaked its way in to become the atom seed of monotheistic religiosity, how it's the black cube worn on the head of those very, very devout Judaic elements, how the Kaaba, the black cube of the Kaaba in Mecca, is the epicenter of devotional worship, and in that sense, false light worship, idolatry, in the Islamist traditions. And so it goes on and on. We talk about the black cube of the hat of graduates in universities, and the professorial attire, and the outfits that judges wear, the black Saturnian robes, and so on and so on and so on. So this black Saturnian mythos, again, which has snaked its way in archetypally into every single aspect psychoculturally of the humans field of reality. That is the Dark Lord made manifest. That is the archonic force. That is the dragnet of horror and of draconian police brutality and draconian court systems, and the penury of humanity, the poverty and desecration of humanity has been wrought really in contrast to that government, the Catholic Church. So the Saturnian piece is everything connected to the contrast against which we now are forced to define our sovereignty, our consciousness, our living conscience, and our ascension itself.
Yeah, I mean, this is very true, and as we awaken to this reality, and great luminaries like David Icke have obviously spoken about the Saturn matrix, and our great friend Laura Eisenhower for many, many years, but knowledge must be shared and power must be questioned. And in some ways, you see, the silence is the greatest ally of control, and awareness is the beginning of resistance. And so really, at the end of the day, here we are now, we're stepping into a new self-authority. See, the Aries axis is radical self-sovereignty. And when we see Neptune and Saturn conjoined in February to the exact minute for the first time in February, we had a close conjunction a few months ago. Next year, we will see the activation of the individual, which will say no to Saturn, because Saturn, when he rolled out Baphomet, as we said, when he rolled out the pandemic, we had all those planets closely conjoined in Saturn's rulership of Capricorn. Isn't it interesting that Great Britain was created, the active union was created under the Capricorn stars? Saturn it rules the United Kingdom. And of course, when Saturn moved into Aries for the first time only a few months ago, what did Britain do? It rolled out dimming of the sun. Saturn, to reduce Aries, the sun is exalted. Astrology is so literal sometimes. So here we are now with obviously 3i Atlas and this whole potential for Saturn to be held up, seen for what it is. All the great religions have heavy spiritual lifting. None of us are going to be left out. And this is where I appeal to not only my Jewish friends and my Muslim friends, but my fellow Christian friends. Serious heavy lifting, as you've described brilliantly about the black cube. It's omnipresent in all three of the revealed religions, just in different ways. The Jews have to separate the Khazarian infiltration. The Muslims have to understand that jihad is not the way, and Sharia law isn't the way forward for a sovereign individual human being. And Christians have to understand the infiltration. One example through the Gideon Bible, which was a Zionist conspiracy to put on every bedside table in the 20s and 30s in order to falsely push more of a Zionist, Judaic interpretation of Christianity. It's okay. I'm in this. You're in this. We're in this together. That is the Pluto in Aquarius discussion, because Pluto until 2044 or thereabouts is in massive, massive change of ontology. Aquarius.
Beautifully stated. Very beautifully
Aquarius
stated.
is beliefs. And so every single one of us has to totally take a deep breath, North Node in Pisces, bring out the heart chakra, the toroidal field, and stop being so harsh on yourself and others because they've got a different belief system. I am not my belief. Sacha is not his belief. We are souls having a human experience, and beliefs pass through us.
Nice. Very nice indeed. I see that we've been taken down off one of our Facebook pages as we've been speaking. I'm just wondering if it's connected to the subject matter here. Christy, you might want to speak to that. Take a look and see if you can troubleshoot at the back there. A little bit concerning there, but it seems that if you say that one word out of tune with the status quo, those algorithms seem to work overtime. In any event, the other platforms are still live, I can see, but very curious there. Look, what in terms of the macro cosmic mirror, what planetary archetypes or energies seem most at play in this global transformation? You've touched on some of them, but just give us a recap there.
I mean, I really do feel the one to watch over the next 6 months is going to be the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, because this particular conjunction at the world axis, which is the 0 point of Aries, hasn't happened for over 6,000 years. And Saturn is structure. Saturn is order, control. And Saturn's at his weakest place in Aries. And right at that beginning point of Aries, there's always a vast amount of energy that goes into, the equinoxes and the solstices. It's all mathematics. It's all music of the spheres. So I think Saturn, which is structure, and Aries brings about new structure, new ideas of self-sovereignty, self-mastery, is going to be very present within the collective. And then individually, you have to see where is late Pisces, early Aries in your respective charts. Which part of your chart is it activating? Is it in your first house of self, how you give yourself out to the world, how people see you? Is it in your 7th house of one-on-one relationships, your partner? Is it in your career house, 10th house? Is it in the family house, the 4th, and so on? But then there's also the planet, for example, of Uranus. Uranus goes back for the final time to the last degree of Taurus right now, and then finally in a few months' time enters into Gemini and is there for its, the rest of the cycle. The last time Uranus was in Gemini was the Second World War. The time before that was the Civil War. The time before that was the Revolutionary Wars. What's the difference this time? The difference this time is the planetary spheres, the planetary alignments make these harmonious, beautiful sextiles and trines. Sextiles are 60-degree, trines are 120 degrees. In the previous iterations of those wars, there were squares, which is a much bigger thrust towards conflict and conflagration. So today, I take a deep breath and get excited that yes, it's an energetic shift, and yes, it's very debilitating, but it's super exciting because we are birthing something so profoundly necessary for our species to go to this next level, which includes the disclosure, the galactic disclosure.
Yeah.
I mean, even the other day, I saw a video, which I was assured was not a digital one, it was analog, of a griffin. And we're going to start to see, much of this Atlantean stuff start to show up, and on UFOs, people, all of us, Tom, Dick, and Sally, were having new experiences. This is a collective awakening. It's not just for a few of us.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, November. Let's look at November, December, moving into Q1 of next year. What does the move? And I just want to quickly run something here. One of our folks here commented, let's step away from the black cubes and focus on the spheres. I rather like that. I think that really says it all. We really ought to step away from the cube and look at the sphere.
It's interesting. That's a brilliant comment, because it is also pushing towards creating higher realms of consciousness, because squares are more material, they're more stuck energy, especially when you look at the notion of alchemy. You need the square, but you also need the circle and the triangle. I think with the North Node in Pisces, what we really can look forward to, and of course we have a full moon in Taurus, and Venus is exalted in Taurus, the new light codes are coming in. They're going to stimulate our DNA. Remember, water is condensed light. So the water that we're carrying is going to carry these light codes. And even this 3-eye atlas, it's not square. There are no hard edges on it.
Yes,
it's very spherical. So thank you to that for that contribution.
Well, I wouldn't say it's spherical. I'd say it's more like an elongated potato.
No, that's true. Yeah, but we're not dealing with square. We're not doing. Here's the thing: we're not doing with hard edges. Water, for example, when it travels, it likes to create vortexes and helixes and spirals. Yeah. And so here we are, water's carrying these light codes. Water becomes more radiant the more we allow to create that structured water. We're becoming more crystalline, less carbon, more crystalline, liquid crystal. So I feel, this is the fourth phase of water. We're all beginning to understand much more about how to power ourselves up. So it's not just what we eat, it's also what we drink and how we activate the waters inside us in order to push towards consciousness. And I think we're going to be very supported by the 3-eye atlas. That's my intimation.
Yeah, that's very, very beautiful. I'm just, I believe this weekend having a meeting with somebody, a scientist, or I think it's a Russian, who is established or created an algorithm which is workable through a telephone app where you can charge the water, and that can be forensically identified. So I'm very excited about this. You can supercharge the water and attune it to your own DNA for health, and then drink that water. We all know that that's how it works, but to some great extent, technology can also help augment that phenomenon.
For sure. And also, it's interesting, just so happens that Jupiter is currently exalted, because if you look in the night sky, Jupiter's in Cancer, and that's a water sign. And obviously Jupiter's over the United States birth chart, because the United States was born under the zodiac sign of Cancer. So unity consciousness comes from more and more people blessing the water. Literally, when we start to really bless it and alchemize it, because it carries consciousness, it carries memory, it carries feeling. When we start to interact with that, it's amazing what changes. And I've experienced this firsthand, putting some of my patients at these retreats, not only into the salt water of the Aegean using sound, but also teaching people sun gazing. And it's not just staring at the sun. Every morning for 2 or 3 weeks, we were getting up in the morning, looking at the sun and allowing the eyes to be flooded with the photonic light. And not only does that work, but when you start to understand that it's a conscious entity, you're having a relationship with the sun, that's when the magic starts to happen. And the magic of today is the science of tomorrow. And it's that sense of, wow, we get activated, our DNA is turned on, our mitochondria get stimulated. All these things are really remarkable. And even the other day, I haven't got it with me, I have some lovely cobalt blue glass now, and Christian Northrup and I were experimenting with this only last week. And cobalt is the precursor to B12. So when you put water, structured water in the blue, and you put it in the sunlight, you get your B12. It's amazing.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. What can we expect for November? You're shirking the question. November, December, moving into Q1 of next year.
Okay, so let me just pull up the chart so I can just have a quick look at what's going to be coming in. So, I mean, right now, I mean, obviously the full moon is going to be a big one, November the 5th. And so the full moon is going to be in Taurus, and it's going to be obviously opposite the sun in Scorpio. We're going to have a very interesting T-square with Eris. Well, Venus is going to make an opposition to Eris and Chiron. So I would say when it comes to relationships is very, very much on the cards this coming month in November. And these could be of any type of relationship, whether it's a business relationship, a personal relationship, a cultural relationship, family. Be very aware that relationships that are no longer serving you are going to be kind of booted out of your field, because we have this T-square with Pluto and Jupiter playing in the mix. It's a grand cardinal cross.
So are you saying, forgive me, are you saying that this is a detox moment, and this is so you're going to find that relationships that do not serve will just evaporate?
I feel that. And of course, great new relationships will certainly start to come in too, or the ones you've started to, they will go on to turbocharge. It's really about soul family alignment, because you did ask me before we came on air about the split of the species. Is there going to be the potential for a schism between the species? And I think what will play out is certain people, especially with the anaretic degree of Pisces where Neptune is, if they're not able to enter that spiritual conversation within themselves, they are going to be more pulled into the Saturn fear. And that's when, they'll take more, jibbity jabs. They'll go down a very different vector, as opposed to the ones choosing consciousness, choosing love, choosing authenticity. Those relationships are going to mirror that ascension process. So it doesn't matter who we are, as we ascend in consciousness, in love, in our authenticity. Remember, authenticity is really the key ingredient. You can't truly love unless you're authentic. Right. And they say the frequency of authenticity is 50 times higher than that of love, because otherwise love becomes conditional. And, so real authenticity allows you to love that much greater. And so with the Venus in Libra, and remember the full moon that we're just about to experience is in Taurus, and Venus rules Taurus. So we're dealing with a very Venusian signature this month. The relationships, and Chiron, the wounded healer, is opposite Venus, next door to Eris. If anything, Chiron and Eris is the maverick. Chiron and Eris is the outlier. So we're going to really align ourselves, especially with Uranus now going back to the anaretic degree of Taurus, that he's the outlier. We are really going to lean into our self-sovereignty and reject anything that's holding us back, hopefully. And that's how we can help the planet and ourselves ascend.
Beautiful. Okay, so all things considered, a supermoon on the 5th of November, notwithstanding, because that can, in a sense, be regarded as calamitous energetically for a great many folks, based on what you've been saying. I mean, think that inauthentic relationships, inauthentic businesses, inauthentic paradigms are going to be collapsing, as I understand it. That is calamitous and will be calamitous for a great many folk. So that notwithstanding, it's also the opposite. It's incredibly affirmative and upshifting for those of us who have been holding true to right action and pure truth in our lives, and yet have been assailed by the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil and the taxman and all the other shittery that goes on in this matrix. So in a sense, you see this November being a tremendous stepping stone. It moves into December and January. Speak a bit more to that.
I mean, it's going to be also very interesting watching 3i Atlas around the winter solstice, because the winter solstice, it comes conjoined. Hang on, let me guess. There's an act. I think it's closest to us on the planet at the time of the winter solstice. I can't exactly remember whether it's the closest to us, or because I know Jupiter's next year, and then again Mars and Jupiter's later on in the year. It's done Mars, and I think it's closest to us. And there's a big activation around the winter solstice, because in some ways it's another rebuke towards the dark Saturnia. And I think we're sort of leading up to that. If you think about 3i Atlas, it's built up this amazing energy of Venus and the sun. I saw some, I can't necessarily say it's true, because I can't trust anything I see in a video these days, but I saw the 3i Atlas take the energy and exchange the solar energy when it came past the sun. And to me, that's very interesting, because when I shut my eyes and think of any type of interstellar activity, in transportation beyond portals, I would naturally think about charging up my vehicle every time I go to a local star.
Yeah.
And so I sense it's doing that. It's going to bring more of that solar energy coupled with Venus energy, one of the great benefics for us. And it's going to shower that like a shower storm onto us of beneficence, of activation, almost like a Kundalini awakening. And I think that's going to help us through the winter months. But the choice is for us, do we go down that avenue of opportunity, of an opening, of grace, if you like? The comet Swan to me is all about grace to support us with those archetypes.
Yeah.
Or are we going to, unfortunately, some people, they will go into some form of psychosis because they haven't been able to do the jump. There's still some people getting, the jibbity jab. There's still people totally as they were doing 4 or 5 years ago, which for me is so sad.
Staggering.
I mean, I've got to the stage.
Speak freely, George, because that contingent are definitely not watching this live symposium.
Well, it's also because if the Facebook's been taken down, because I realize even on all these platforms there's going to be an element of self-censorship because of course we don't want things to be taken down. But it's mind-boggling. But to me, I've gone to the stage now where I just observe people. I can go grief. I've lost all my anger towards it.
Yeah.
And in a way, there is the choice, you see, of humanity, mankind. Are we going to choose the divine inheritance of our blueprint, the Christ consciousness, the fractals of divine spark on the one hand, or are we going to go down the homogenetic transhuman on the other? And for people like you and I, this is very clear, but there's a bunch of the population. I'm up here in the Northeast at the moment of the United States. It's tough in Massachusetts. It's tough because there are a ton of people who haven't got a clue still. And my heart goes out to them. But,
you're a kinder man than I. Forgive me for interrupting. My heart does not go out any longer to that. I'm in full militant triage mode. And the way I see it, George, we have had the grace of God for so long now, inviting an awakening, inviting that inner reckoning individually, every single one of us. And those who have chosen not to align with truth or authenticity, which you rightly say has got a frequency set 50 times higher than that of love. That makes absolute sense to me. But the inauthentic, those who have chosen the fictitious, have chosen entropy, have chosen the trial of separation for another great cycle. Godspeed, but get the fuck off this planet. We really need to now move into morphogenetic upshift as far as I'm concerned.
100%.
So, right, that's where I'm at. And I think that I'm increasingly inviting friends and in my circle to stop holding back their own journey because they're consistently going to the back of the line to spoon feed. And Edna doesn't want to be redeemed. Edna has chosen to play with Atlantean light for another cycle.
But darling, my little possum, Dame Edna. What about Dame Edna? Dame Edna loves to be redeemed. No, anyway, that's me being silly. And that's a British Australian comedian. Sorry for being silly. But I will say this though. This is where I'm very positive about 3-eye atlas, there's going to be something alchemical that may help shift people's consciousness. And this is where I'm still, because of my understanding of water and also the metals in the body, I look at some of these people and their bodies are just not human any longer. They're not activated. So they don't have the ability, for lots of reasons. It's complex. And of course, they've lost their self-sovereignty. So I'm definitely agreeing with you. But I'm also saying, I pray that this interstellar object, entity, actually allows to give a jump start to some of those people.
Very good.
That's what I hope for.
Very good. Well, who better, George H. Lewis, to speak to the phenomena of 3-eye atlas than arguably the greatest expert in the temporal veil right now, who happens to have snuck into the studio whilst you and I were speaking. David Sarita, sir, tell us all about 3-eye atlas.
There's so much I know at this point. I mean, it's a thesis, but I'll give you like an abstract, and then I could maybe show some images. So, and kind of go backwards in time. Like, so today on Avi Loeb's blog, and he is a groundbreaking physicist at Harvard, but he's not willing to go as far as the real data shows.
Correct.
But on the Loeb scale, this morning, it just went up another notch for it to be extraterrestrial, because as it's coming around from its perihelion yesterday, its closest position to the sun, it started emitting blue light. And blue light is higher in frequency. So most comets, when they come around the back of the sun, they'll emit orange-red. And of course, blue light is hotter, therefore more energy in a thermal conversion, higher frequency, and it's highly unexpected, which could signify that it has its own energy emission in the form of escape velocity from the sun. Although its velocity is already fast enough to escape the sun, this sudden shift in the blue was so unexpected. Now, I want to tell you what happened. Nobody even noticed this. Last night, Trump called for the detonation, the testing of thermonuclear weapons, which Kennedy signed in 1963, a test ban treaty banning all above ground, all water, and space-based detonation of nuclear weapons because of what the impacts are for the global sustainability and ecology. The very fact that he's doing this at perihelion, he did it at perihelion, he announced it yesterday, it's all over the news today, is telling us, no, this is not about Russia and China. They already know what these bombs can do. This is sending a message to our visitor, hey, we have these huge bombs down here. Don't mess with us. That's what I get, because there's no way in the current instability of the planet that we can afford to detonate nuclear weapons above ground anymore. So, and he's saying to do this immediately, and immediately there is no imminent threat right now other than test flights of ICBMs, which the United States did in the last couple of years from Vandenberg Air Force Base. They tested the Minuteman, which is still the fastest missile alive, 18,000 miles an hour. And Russia just tested an ICBM that went 8,000 miles. And Trump, you know, his rhetoric to that was that we have submarines off your coast. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. So why does he do this at perihelion? Because the news, first of all, October 1st, right at Yom Kippur, of course, I already demonstrated as 3-eye atlas came in, as across the orbit of each planet marked a highest religious holiday or special dates and holidays for most of the world's greatest religions. And we covered that before. So at Yom Kippur, the US government shuts down. The Mars HiRISE camera, which is the best camera in the solar system because it's a gigapixel level camera, not a megapixel level camera. It shuts down October 1st. It's still down. Avi Loeb has actually made contact with the principal investigator at the University of Arizona on that camera, and he won't answer him, which means the resolution on that camera is so good that it definitely proves or disproves what it is. However, only days later, the European Space Agency released footage in the form of still photography frames of it, and those images show a highly geometric structured megastructure, nothing like a comet. But what I did is, because the high rise was shut down, and also the US government shut down the same day. They shut down on Yom Kippur. Nobody even notices it's Yom Kippur. They shut down the government. It's still shut down, which then allowed them to turn off our access to space observation. However, I went to a very old camera. As 3i Atlas was getting really close to the sun, it's actually just a little bit above it and behind it from our view, starting on even a few days before perihelion, which was the 29th, which is yesterday. And I captured something remarkable on the LASCO C3 camera. Now, we talked before, and I demonstrated that 3i Atlas, its bullseye was hyperdimensional orbit 591, which is the number my wife gave me from her after-death experience, that there is a heavenly body, and with an orbit of 591 days just inside the orbit of Mars is the bullseye of 3i Atlas. And I think I have captured 591 on the C3 camera. And this thing is so huge, it's not 3i Atlas. It is planetary in size, and it appears in a single photograph frame, then it disappears for 2 or 3 frames, and then it comes back.
Wow.
And then it disappears and comes back. And that is exactly what happened when astronomers in the early 19th century were observing planet Vulcan near the sun. They saw a planet. They knew it wasn't a sunspot. It had an orbit of 20 days, rounded off, and it appeared and disappeared. And because it disappeared, planet Vulcan, it became a hypothetical planet, which was in the pre-advancement of understanding of the science of today. Beatrice Villarreal, the Vanishing Stars Project physicist from Sweden, just released a paper a couple of days ago that really explains the sudden appearance and vanishing of planetary to star-sized objects in space that were captured on the Palomar Observatory in San Diego in the 1950s. This paper is so good, I've scrutinized it, and it sets the stage for understanding that whole planetary bodies can appear and disappear and appear and disappear. In her paper, in a matter of 15 to 20 minutes, that these whole bodies can disappear.
David?
So what I've got on LASCO is proof that I think we're looking at 591 in the bullseye of 3i Atlas. When it reached perihelion, I looked, and it's right above in the camera to the left of 3i Atlas. This thing is
good. Yeah. Very good. I just want to get George's comments whilst he's here to what he's heard in the last 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it just helps me gain a greater understanding. I mean, because I don't know. I mean, I could listen to you all day, David. It's fascinating, and I think for me it's very positive, though, that this entity is going to help us in our awareness of something much bigger outside the Earth. It's going to help us in terms of not just disclosure, but our own understanding of who we are as a species. You see, in some ways, humanity can't really succeed until our real history has been sort of released, from the depths of the Vatican and elsewhere. There's so much hidden, and I think this is very much part of a transition towards getting much more information, more knowledge, hence us being able to step into greater understanding and wisdom. So that, to me, I'm very positive about what's happening.
Indeed. And I have to say, David, Jim from Facebook says that you've been hologrammed, David Sarita. Apparently you're buying into Project Bluebeam. What do you say to that?
Well, there's to produce a hologram at a distance from here to the planet Mars. I mean, I mean, I know all these. I don't even know if we have the technology to make really good holograms that are indistinguishable from reality yet. We do on the internet.
Can I ask you a question, David, on that?
Yeah.
Isn't there a difference, though, between we, the people, us, and then the secret space program, people with the hidden technology? See, for me, I believe like 9/11 was very much using some of that technology. I'm not going to go into that now, but surely that technology has been extant for many, many decades, and we, the people, humans, haven't been party to it. And part of the disclosure is us catching up with that laggard.
Okay, so you have, again, UFO, UAP hearings in Congress right now. The last hearing, which was on the 9th of October, I watched the whole thing. The first case was a giant red square UFO that appeared over Vandenberg Air Force Base on the 14th of October, which is within one day of the miracle of the sun at Fatima. So the miracle of the sun at Fatima, I mathematically proved, is another hyperdimensional planet that eclipsed between the Earth and the sun on that date. And in fact, in my algorithm mathematics, starting with this hyperdimensional orbit of 591 divided by the golden ratio is the exact orbit of Earth, divided by the golden ratio is the exact orbit of Venus, divided by the golden ratio is this planet with an orbit of 139 to 141 days, is Fatima. And that's because the first date of Fatima, which was May the 13th, is within 139 days of the new sun, which is December 25th. So December 25th plus 139 days is May 13th, which is the first day of Fatima. And that number comes up over and over and over again because it's the date of Jesus's ascension, the right. Buddha's birth date, and Three Eye Atlas marks that on the way in with the outer planet.
Is that right? Because I heard it was 139,000 miles per hour it was traveling at. Is that also correct?
Well, I have its exact. So one of the calculations I did, for people who are interested, you just go to my Medium page. Just go on Medium and search David Sarita. I have huge articles on this with mathematics. So if I calculate the astronomical unit distance of Three Eye Atlas at perihelion, Earth is 1. So the distance from the Earth to the sun is 1 astronomical unit. And then it's 1.39 actually. There it is.
Yeah.
Astronomical units. And I take the ratio of Earth to Mars and I average the two. It's 1 to 1.618, which is exactly where the orbit of 591 is.
If I can bring this back to the people who, like myself, who don't know the technical stuff, why I have goosebumps now is you are basically describing the music of the spheres perfectly. That nothing
right, which is actually one of my favorite books. I have right back there, Jamie James' Music of the Spheres, because one of the things Loeb said recently. And he's fighting the mainstream astronomers. He was on Joe Rogan the other day. I was watching him on Joe Rogan. So he's saying at perihelion, this mothership, Three Eye Atlas, is going to release mini probes. When you think of mini probes and you think of the size of Three Eye Atlas, mini probes are going to be bigger than whole rocket ships that we're aware of. And they'll distribute them all to the planets. And Rogan asked him, well, how will we know? And he says, well, you'll start seeing little goddesses running around or appearing. In fact, in Jamie James' Music of the Spheres, there's the scene of this goddess. Her name is Harmony at a wedding feast, and she's wearing something that looks like my coils on her chest, these wheeled within wheeled instruments. And out of this wells the most spectacular music that anybody's ever heard, far surpassing the tetrachord, the monochord, and the harp, and the flute, which the Greeks had. And she's surrounded after the wedding feast, and she's adorned in gold, and she's a total goddess. She's come from another world, and she's playing a form of music that we don't understand. And she's saying, the secret to my music is actually what I call the harmony of the order, or the music of the spheres, based on the rotational periods of the orbits of the planets. And so that's what Three Eye Atlas is doing. It's actually marking the positions in the harmony of the order. And when you see what the Lasco C3 camera caught even yesterday, actually this morning, I went on the Lasco camera and it caught my hyperdimensional object again. And it's not an object because we can tell in the total arc minutes of view of the Lasco camera, which is like having a ruler in space and measuring, I can tell how big this thing is, because we have a similar image from an amateur astronomer looking at the sun at this tiny speck, which is what 3i Atlas is, and we see my object, which is in the position of the bullseye of where 3i Atlas was headed, which is orbit 591, which my wife gave me from the other side. And there's this massive megastructure there. I mean, it's an incredible, huge thing.
It's interesting, though, David, you bring up harmonia or harmony, because if I'm not mistaken,
The goddess
harmony is the goddess
Yeah.
Harmony, and she is the product of the god of war, Aries, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Mars.
Right.
And so what it represents, if I'm not mistaken, is this balance, this integration between opposing forces, polarity, to find a new way, the birthing of new consciousness. So
that's a brilliant insight that you just said, because yeah, she's in the middle of two parents. You know,
there we go.
Aries, the god of war, Mars, and Aphrodite, which is Venus, and that's exactly where I'm looking. I'm looking at those in between positions, because I'm sure you'll recognize this immediately, George. I mean, Dante's Paradiso.
Of course. Yeah.
In the Paradiso, Dante, in his out-of-body visions, goes through the familiar planets, and with each planet, there's an increase of supernatural bliss consciousness.
Yeah.
And when he gets to the highest bliss, he's actually out near the orbit of Neptune, even though Neptune wasn't discovered in the 14th century when Dante wrote this, but he described Neptune even though there was no Neptune.
The archetypes are there. Even Uranus before it was discovered. Yeah.
And Uranus wasn't discovered yet either. So he's sitting there, and and Beatrice, his beloved, his tour guide who died, you know the story, she shows him there's 9 more planets of the angels cascading back towards the sun, and those upper 9 have been known in the Vedas. They call them they knew a model of 7 lower planets in the Vedas and the 7 lokas, which are they're all called lokas, but the higher lokas are for the enlightened.
Yeah, the harmonics. It's like the 9 harmonics. It's all
right.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at another Fatima right now. We're looking at, and this experience happened to 2 people, myself and a woman who lives right underneath me. This is an incredible experience because it was on the 5th of October. I was sleeping in my guest cabin. My kids are asleep in the house. And I see this bright light coming in the room, and I think the sun is up, and I must have slept in. And I get up, and it's really bright, and it's dark. I go out on the deck, and I look at the sky. 3i Atlas, and it has not risen yet down here on the 5th of October, which is a couple of days after Yom Kippur. I go back to bed, and I consciously leave my body, and right up in the sky to the southwest, it's not 3i Atlas, is a glowing sphere the size of a planet, as bright as the sun. But this light is sending me peace and healing and love, and I'm really amazed by it. Well, weeks later, I give this lecture, and this old customer of mine that I knew from Sedona, she lives right underneath me, and she got up at 4 a.m, but she physically saw it, and she goes, "There's no moon right now. It's as bright as the sun."
This is so synchronistic, David.
And
I had this experience yesterday, driving from Maine to where I am. I mean, I'm not joking. I had something that bright follow me above my truck for.
There's a portal open right now, and this is what I'm talking about. It opened a portal to these higher angelic spheres. I'm getting goosebumps too. So what I did,
amazing.
I go on Google Earth with her,
and
I mark her position in Okanagan, Washington, and she's actually in a little town. And I measured on Google Earth. We're 139 miles apart. Wow. Planet 139. And the angle between us is the Great Pyramid's resurrection angle, which is between 38 and 39 degrees. So if you take the Great Pyramid's angle at just under 52 degrees, the leftover is 38 to 39 degrees. And that's called the angle of resurrection in Egypt, which is where the god Osiris resurrects at that angle. So why am I at resurrection angle from her? We both see it on the morning of the 5th of October before sunrise, and I'm looking, actually, the object, it's not an object, it's a planet, but it's glowing up there. But she's walking on her deck. She goes in, she sees it, she goes in the house. Now, 15 minutes later, she goes back out. It's not there.
Yeah.
See, and that's what Beatrice Villarreal's paper is showing, real photographs of whole planets or stars. She calls them stars. That, and she explains why in the physics terms and the optics of the camera, they appear on our telescopes, and 15 minutes later, they're gone. They're not in the next frame.
And David, you know what? Just also bring it. I mean, I'm going to leave you to it in a minute because my time's up. But I just love this because in a way, Sacha and I were speaking before you came on about the Neptunian, about the moving away from the Cartesian into the non-linear, into the spherical, and the amorphous. This is very North Node in Pisces. Because at the end of the day, we're having to come to terms with a different type of reality as we grow. And it's that heart opening as opposed to the mind running. And I'm very excited to hear this because it just...
Well, I want to hear what you saw on your trip.
Okay, well, I was driving down, actually, from staying with Dr. Christian Northrup, which was a mutual friend of ours.
Well, that would do it. That would do it.
That would do it from her portal, which is definitely an Arcturian portal. And
what's the date? What's the date?
That was actually, it was yesterday.
Okay, that's perihelion. Okay.
That's when it happened. And I can tell you the time. It was in the evening because it was dark. Yes, it was dark. So whenever it was about an hour after sunset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, it was fascinating because I thought it was a star, and then it was too bright, and then I thought it was an aeroplane. I was driving at 60 miles an hour, so I was in my truck on my own, and one wants to be sensible. There wasn't many people on the highway, and it was very stationary, and I knew, okay, this is not a plane, and it got very, very bright, and it came above me, and it paused over me just in front of me for about 60 seconds, and then it suddenly went. And I said, oh my gosh, it just felt amazing. That's all that happened. But it's just like so synchronistic that you should describe something.
Well, yeah, see, they're the way I see these portals is they're like vortices or disks, rings that have orbits. And when they have a certain angle of alignment between observers, you're seeing through into this other dimension. And I think that's what happened at Fatima. I've looked at all the evidence at Fatima. And of course, astronomers think 100,000 people were having a mass hallucination. Whenever a scientist says, oh, that's just a mass hallucination, then you have to say to the scientist, could you produce one? Let's get 100,000 people on a hillside, and can you make us all see something? Because you have to prove the anti-theory to your argument, because a scientist can't accept a hyperdimensional universe, even though quantum physicists can. They just come up with garbage and say, oh yeah, or they say, oh, that's just an artifact of the camera. That's an artifact of the camera. I know cameras professionally for over 30 years. Artifacts on cameras are extremely rare. If you're getting continuous artifacts on your camera, it's time to throw it away, and the technology with it. So whenever a scientist can't accept data, like I've got data from the WASCO C3 camera right now that keeps repeating this hyperdimensional, I'll call it a planetoid because it's at least as big as the planet Mercury. And I can tell its distance based on the timing of the exposure on this thing. I think they know they're up there. I think that's why our high-rise camera, the best camera in the solar system, is still down. I'm told Loeb is saying that Representative Anna Luna, who is the congresswoman from Florida who has been on the congressional hearing panels on UAP and UFOs, that she has a call in to that office to release the images. But they've had so much time between October 1st and the 3rd or 4th when they took the images to manipulate them and smudge them, that if they ever do release them, I'm really doubtful we'll see what they really saw. Again, that camera is operating in gigapixels. The the Mars, the ESA images from the European Space Agency are good. They show incredible geometry, which I presented on my platforms. But I think there's something else up there with it, and it's It's Three Eye Atlas is just pointing. It's like a pointer. Yes, it's conscious. It is powered. Now, this is another important point to make. When I studied with this physicist from Stanford, I'm just trying to remember his name, William Tiller. William Tiller was in What the Bleep Do We Know way back, but I interviewed Tiller. So Tiller did scientific studies with great scrutiny to prove that consciousness, and he demonstrated this, is more powerful than gamma rays when it's coherent. In fact, most of the evidence we have from the Roswell retrieval is that there's no motor, that these highly coherent brains that are operating these vehicles are the ones powering them. So this would be a hypothesis way beyond Newtonian physics, that if Three Eye Atlas doesn't exhibit a form of heat energy signature thrust, then what could be powering it is highly coherent conscious beings.
Yes, indeed.
And Tiller proves this. And I know exactly how he did it, how he did the experiments, because I learned from him in person in Arizona when I was living there and filming him. So at a wavelength of blue light, which we're seeing, blue light has more power than red light, right? Has more power than green light, has more power than orange, and all the colors underneath it. So the news that broke today is a signature of a possible energetic source that is emitting blue light, which means just like when you're cooking on your stove, your blue flame is hotter than your orange flame. That represents energy. That may be a signature of more Newtonian type drive propulsion for Three Eye Atlas. But
right.
if we don't see a sudden acceleration at perihelion, and they have that data right now, if we don't see Loeb's predicted sudden acceleration, then it's probably driven by, and literally superconsciousness operates at a wavelength smaller than gamma rays, which means it's brighter than gammas. So when the sun produces an X-class flare, those are X-ray solar flares, it's brighter than the background at the exposure and the filtering of the sun because it's hotter, has more temperature, and therefore more energy. So a gamma ray flash is millions of times brighter than an X-ray, and a consciousness flash on William Tiller's scale is millions of times brighter than a gamma ray.
David, I'm going to jump in here if you don't mind, because we're way over time on the segment, and this is just too fascinating. But let me ask this question. When is the dateline 0, as far as you're concerned, with this Three Eye Atlas phenomenon? When is dateline 0, the moment of reckoning, likely to be?
Well, the first dateline was its bullseye, and that was, there's 2 days. One is the 21st of October, which is when my object appeared on the C3 Glasgow camera, which I have yet to show on your platform. And then it will cross that bullseye again on November 11th. Isn't that interesting? Well, and then November 3rd, it pairs with Venus. And then it's going to be a great pyramid angle from Earth on Christmas Day. Great pyramid angle from Earth on Christmas Day. So, and the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, on Avi Loeb's scale, it suddenly jettisons away from holding this relatively flat-lined Christmas window position for about 2 weeks before Christmas. It's pretty much holding a flat line almost perfectly with Earth. Has to be planned. So I would say that is a major date, the Christmas window. So winter solstice, the 21st, 22nd of December.
Okay.
And then you have Christmas, and then after that, it's going to pair with Jupiter on the 16th of March, which is the night of power in Islam, where we have another camera, the Juno spacecraft, which, if they're not showing us HiRISE, I have HiRISE bookmark right in front of me, and when I click on it, it's still shut down. They're not showing us.
But also, can you see how they're all connected to the angles, to the solstice and the equinox too? So that's interesting from an astrological perspective.
Yeah, you and I should meet. I can show you my angles project online at the Giza Plateau. I've made stunning discoveries on the sacred angles to the Giza Plateau pointing, like, for example, from the Giza Plateau, Peter Le Mesurier discovered this. He called it the Bethlehem angle. So the same angle of ascension and descension in the Great Pyramid that leads to the King and Queen's chamber is 26.3 degrees. But that's to the north-south.
Yeah,
26 degrees to the east, the rising position runs through Bethlehem, but it also runs through where Jesus was baptized.
Right.
Now, to the west, the setting angle, 26 degrees, is Fatima. Can you believe that? It's Fatima. So that means the Star of Bethlehem was one of these hyperdimensional heavenly bodies, planet 139, rose in the east at 26 degrees, set in the west at 26.
What I was driving at is, because I have to wrap this up now, because I've got to jump to another segment. But what I'm driving at is, should we look to just parachute in on the 11th of November for a session, just a live one on all platforms?
That would be a great idea to do. I could show imagery then of what I'm talking about.
I would love that. And George, if you're available, I'd love to bring you in.
I love George's comments on this. George,
I also think the religious festivals, David, is very fascinating, because what we're trying to do is update that energy, which is really quite Saturnian, as Sacha was speaking about earlier, and it needs to be Uranian. It needs to be flipped a little bit upwards to higher realms of consciousness. So it needs to go on all the religious holidays.
Well, look, let's do that. George, does the 11th sound doable for you?
Yeah.
Great. Well, then Christy's in the green room here. Probably, I don't know if she's smiling or scowling at me on the suggestion, but I do think it would be a great thing to come in on the 11th, do this. Right. What I'm interested in doing is also bringing in a couple of remote viewers and have some fun there, because some of the remote viewing is very, very telling. Have you been reading any of these feedback reports?
Well, I have the woman who, she won't let me give her name out yet. I met her with a famous scientist named Ralph Ring, actually.
I knew Ralph well, beloved man.
Okay, so he's in my living room with this woman who saw the glowing planet the same morning as me, but I can't say her name yet. Right. She teaches remote viewing for the past 25 years.
Great.
I've practiced a little bit of it. I mean, I'm a total novice. But
can we invite her in, even to black box her name and face, but invite her in possibly?
Oh, let me ask her.
Thank you. All right, gents, I'm going to have to wind this. But I love the cliffhanger. It's a perfect moment to do this. So shy of 2 weeks from now, we'll come in on another session. David, thank you. George, thank you so very much.
It's always a pleasure. Bye.
Okay, Christy. Sorry about that, but I couldn't cut that any short. I was just loving that conversation so much. Can I bring you in, Christy? Is that good?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so, we have, I think, 40 minutes for the Q&A piece, and then we'll slate another deep dive with George Lewis and with David Sarita, and we'll try and bring in a couple of remote viewers. Now that, friends, will be a Lazarus gift. That'll just be a Lazarus special that we'll do on the 11th of November. I don't even know what day that is, but I know I'm not going to be flying on that day, so it should be workable.
Okay. Yeah, we'll work out the time in a little bit, but just wanted to thank all the Lazarus members for sending in all their questions. We got quite inundated with a bunch, so I had to kind of compile and choose some that kind of could represent the rest. So I hope everyone's happy with the ones that I chose.
Oh, but hang on, before you do that, sorry, change everything. Gita Barton says she's flying on the 11th of November. We're gonna have to change this thing altogether. Tough titty, Gita. Sorry, we'll lose you. You'll have to watch the replay.
Send us your itinerary.
Yeah.
So let me just dive right in to some of the questions. From Stephanie, she says, I followed you for years and have wondered how you've developed such an amazing scope of forces that influence and drive our world and our vital place and how and what we create in relation to it. Who would you say have been the most influential voices, mentors, authors, sacred texts, perhaps, etc., for you to have contributed to your knowing and understanding of everything at play today?
Whoa, that's a really tough question to ask me. And it's also asking me to hoist myself by my own petard, which I'm not likely to do. But I mean, I can safely speak to the kind of veteran element in my beautiful ecosystem, and I'm incredibly blessed there to have had, certainly since 2013, when I crawled out of the closet in 2012. End of 2012 was the Breakthrough Energy Movement Congress, which I was invited to chair in The Hague in Holland. And that was the first time I ever did public speaking, so to speak, and I was chairing that Congress. In fact, Ralph Ring was there, the man that David Sarita was just speaking to. Ralph Ring was the former US pilot who was on the Otis T. Carr Ranch, I think in the 1950s, flying the first UFO. He was part of that controlled scenario with the military intelligence. And he was an incredible man. Michael Tellinger, Foster Gamble, Dr. David Martin, and other friends were also on that Congress that I was chairing in 2012. So I came out at that time and began broadcasting, I think in 2013. Was the first foray I did into broadcasting. And then by 2014, 15, started getting a hang of it. And Dan Winter was really, for me, a very important mind, and still is. And I love Dan enormously. And again, he's a figure who's quite controversial in his way. But he's very out there, and he's always pushed the envelope. And to me personally, he's always been incredibly, consistently sagacious, just grounded, wise, fun, very progressive in the way that he leans into inquiry. I love that. I love anyone, especially with a white beard, who can lean in to life and see the world through the eyes of a child and speak very advanced physics, geometry, mathematics, hyperdimensional physics, and so on, but speak to it. I'm not suggesting that he's the most easy person to understand, because he bloody well is not. But that's, I think, kind of where I came in. I was trying to make some of his more abstruse ideas digestible, because I saw how incredibly important much of his spiritual and scientific philosophy is. So I'd say that Dan Winter has been, for me, a very important cornerstone. But I have to say, David Sarita, who's just been on, is, again, an archetypal wisdom keeper, because he's constantly leaning in, again, into affirmative inquiry. There's no part of David that ever fixes and says, well, this is the remit. So whereas Dan is kind of on the plank thing and kind of is somewhat fixed in certain aspects of his scientific orientation, and there's no shame to that. In science, you have to be fixed into certain elements. But David is, like Dan Winter, has an incredible repertoire, just able to bring his bearing into almost any subject matter, and to do so both seriously with that tremendous depth, but at the same time keep it fun, keep it light, because we don't take life or death too seriously. Anyone who enters into the wisdom flame knows that you disidentify from psycho-emotional reactivity or identification with reality. You actually settle back into the true Solomon throne, which is the true wisdom throne. I mean, fuck Solomon, the historical archetype. I don't have much time for him, and I could wax on that subject. But I'm just talking about archetypally, that the Solomon's throne within each of us, that true throne of sovereignty that says, come hither, sit upon this throne and bear witness to the glory of creation. Now, you are the child of God. You are aligned fully to the Creator, and you can expand your consciousness as limitlessly as you choose. There's your free will, baby, right there. How much genius can we assume? How much creativity can we assume and how much limitless prana, life force, can we assume into this body temple, this vessel, and then go forth into this temporal realm and embody and enact and manifest. So for me, David Sarita is one of those blessed beings. I can't place and put an age to him. Can't do it with Dan Winter either, incidentally. But there have been so many incredible minds and hearts that have come in. Certainly, producer Christy would remember names better than I, but I'm incredibly grateful to the pantheon of influencers and thought leaders and icons and scientists and what have you, who have come through the rank and file of the Lazarus Symposium over, I think it's our 5th year now, 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25. It's our 5th year, and no sign of abating at this stage. Having said that, let me just say to the audience here, there's a rather large audience, I'm glad to see, this is the bonus segment at the front end of the symposium. We get serious behind the gate. So if you want to join the Lazarus Initiative, please go to lazarusinitiative.com or go here. I think Christy's just put up a graphic there. But we do need to get more people in because it's a secret. The Lazarus community is a powerful community, and I'm inviting people to subscribe to this. We need to grow the ranks of this community. There are certain offerings that are going to be made into this community connected to the New Earth Project that are going to be very consequential. So anyone coming into the inner circle here, which is my inner circle, would be greatly welcomed. Sign up here, and then you can continue to watch the rest of the symposium in about half an hour when we flip to the members only segment. And every month, for those of you who don't know, the Lazarus Symposium is normally between 5 and 7 hours long. There's normally a couple of hours we do as a bonus segment at the front end, and then we go into the members only section, and that's when kind of the heavy stuff we go into. So there's normally 4, 5, 6 segments, sometimes more, and each one of them are with another leading light. And you can also have retroactive access to the Lazarus archive, which I would suggest is one of the most important knowledge-based digital archives anywhere on Earth today. I can safely say that after 5 years, thousands of hours of broadcasting to our members only, these extraordinary deep dives, immersion panels and interviews with such extraordinary minds and hearts. So that archive is available to you as a member, and so on and so forth. So there's my little sales pitch dispensed with. Happy to now take the next question. So I'll leave that as Dan Winter and David Sarita really personify the cornerstone for me. But again, there are so many names. And I know that later, probably in the next half hour, I'm going to go, oops, and come up with a bunch more. Obviously, new friends like George Lewis are adding an incredible dimension. Elena Danan, and I'm friends with people who are pitting themselves on both sides of the equation. Just so you know, that's part of where Lazarus situates itself. People say, well, how could you be interviewing so-and-so if so-and-so doesn't like them and thinks that they're a controlled, but whatever. That's not my game or our game. I am genuinely interested in the individuals, and I find them all extraordinary, one way or the other. And I'm happy to be on both sides of the dialectic, doing deep dives, heartfelt dives with folks. So, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, moving on. We have a question from Rosa. She says, hi, Sacha. For those of us who have been on this awakening path for years, sometimes it feels like we're carrying both hope and exhaustion when the outer world seems still asleep. How do we keep faith and stay anchored in love instead of slipping into frustration and doubt?
So that, it's such a beautiful question, and it's such a human question, and it's such a deep question, and it's such an innocuous question at the same time. So I like that kind of question, and I prefer, moreover, my answer to that question, and my answer can only ever be the same answer, which I've given for many, many years. And that's not to sound conceited, but the answer is by doing it. So we only ever do anything by doing it. We only ever accomplish anything by doing it. And it is the idea of limitation, the idea that we cannot achieve something on our own, or that we need to be, in a sense, rescued or salvaged or ameliorated or augmented or accelerated or helped, assisted by an agency outside of self. That's the natural default of being born into this fucked up world. And by fucked up, I'm talking about the fallen light of Atlantis. I'm talking about entropy. I'm talking about usury. I'm talking about time and money and fear as the source code of a mutant civilizational wheel from which we are now, by the grace of the living God, emerging. But the fact of the matter is that we are born as infants. We are infantiled. We are kept in that state of infancy. We are passed from our mother's tit to the subversive false light tit of the education system. And we suckle on that until we're intoxicated on mind fuckery, and then we are spat into the college or university domain, which takes that even further into our liberal intellectual myopia and dystopia, where we are mind controlled and propagandized into a Newtonian, Einsteinian, Cartesian law, which is a crock of proverbial shit. And again, once we are put on those tram lines, we are then suckled into the corporate sector, into the workplace, into professionalism, whatever that means, because we now have a title, we now have a diploma, we have a fancy garment or a medal, and we are then suckled into the professional strata, and we do our function as we are ordained to so do. And that is what is prepared for us, again, as infants, because we're still infantile as we move into the professional realm. And we undertake our task as a technocrat or a bureaucrat or a banker or a wanker or a whatever it is, we're a street sweeper. It doesn't really matter. But we get pushed into the infancy, gets taken into the harvest of our life force, because that's all that work is. It is a harvesting of your time and your motion into coin. So you are enslaved and forced in that sense into deploying your time and your motion in order to get coin. And once you're given your bit of coin, you are required to then pay it back to the satanic draconian government through taxes and through value-added taxes and through every other godless kind of tax that is imposed. So this idea that we ever arrive at a place or a status where we find peace is a bullshit exercise. Anyone smart enough to know what reality looks and smells like knows that. But the point being that we are infantiled into time and motion and work, toil and coin. So time and money and fear of running out of money, fear of running out of time becomes the premise of the mind fuckery that we get pulled into individually, in the familial sense and in the social order of things, in the cultural and civilizational order of things. We are all harvested into this relentless Ouroboros, this snake devouring its own tail of time and money and fear, until we choose to extricate ourselves from it by taking that throne, that true throne of Solomon, which is where we sit back, release and relinquish all adherence to the false light. Fuck your pension, fuck the mortgage, fuck the school fees, all of that nonsense, that shittery, that's the stuff that continues to, as a pestilence, to gnaw away at you. It gnaws away at your supernature, insisting that you must become responsible. Responsible for what and for whom? How happy are your children? How happy is your family life, so long as you're being harvested into this relentless wheel, accumulating objects, accumulating stuff that does not bring peace, does not bring happiness. So again, I suggest that the way is to do it. Simply do it. Remove yourself. Relinquish adherence to false light. By all means, have wealth. By all means, have objects and possessions, but relegate them to where they belong. They are in the realm of the dead, the realm of the fictitious. They have less than zero importance to them. What is important is relationship. And by relationship, I'm speaking of relationship to self above all. And I'm talking about the capitalized self, not the diminished self, not the little Catholic one that, or the little Islamist one, or the little Hindu one, or the little Buddhist one. I'm not talking about the diminished self that goes banging its head on the ground and genuflecting or scrabbling with rosary beads in allegiance to some invisible God. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the diminished self. I'm talking about the one that puts away childish things, the one that takes that throne within the atom seed of the kingdom of self, capitalized S, and says, I am a child of God. I am the son of God. I am the daughter of God. I am a child of God. I am creator. I am in full alignment with my creator. I am my creator. I am one and the same. Do not diminish yourself to your God. If you do that, you are an idolater. And that has always been the message of the Christ, the true Christ, and the true avatars, and the true saints, the true messianic saints of so-called history, have all appealed to the same thing, the same knowing. Step up. Own your incarnation, own your soul. Stop genuflecting, stop bowing and scraping. That is the call, essentially. So the answer is, if we wish to be redeemed or rescued, then we must be the redeemer and the rescuer, and we must align ourselves fully with that immanent flame of divinity, which is the sentient spark, which gave us animus and brought us into this extraordinary realm, not as a slave, not as a salamander, not as something which should be subject to other forces or third-party intervention, but brought us into this realm because we steered ourselves into this vector. We came here in order to awaken to our immanence, our divinity, and become the emissaries of the Godhead, so to speak, in this abysmal abyss, which is the cauldron of creation. It is where the fabric of soul itself is forged. So each of us are the messianic principle in that sense, but only when we realize it.
Okay, Michael is asking, he says, hello, Sacha. We're seeing technology evolve at lightning speed, AI, quantum computing, even claims of off-world programs. Do you think these tools can ever truly serve consciousness, or are they inherently part of the control grid? How do you imagine humanity reclaiming technology in harmony with spiritual evolution?
So, I'm just not seeing a separation. Personally, I'm increasingly not seeing a separation. I'm seeing what I'm looking at right now. I happen to be looking at a palatial Moroccan palace, and I'm very fortunate to be seeing things that are construed in tremendous beauty and form and shape and color and texture. But more than that, I'm observing a new geometry of light that I've spoken to certainly for many years, but I'm observing it now. I knew it was coming. I had a presentiment of it for many, many years based on some prophetic visions which I had in 1997 and even earlier than that in the late 1980s. So I've had, as many of us have, I've had some extraordinary experiences, otherworldly experiences. In my case, born out of pure sobriety and never connected to hallucinogenics or taking some kind of chemical compound. But I've had my revelatory prophetic events that have completely transmuted me in the past. And so I had a presentiment and a prescience of this emergence of this new geometry of light. And that's why in 1999, I founded my Peace Foundation, stepped away from the music, the allure of all of that celebrity bullshit, which I was at that point connected to. And that was the life that was set before me, was very much steeped in false light in that sense. And I took a very rapid U-turn and moved into the higher calling that I had because of a particular reckoning that occurred at that time in my life. And then going into that mission, that deep mission, and setting forth on that mission in 1999. Now that's 25 years ago, a long time ago in a sense. I'm certainly fresher today than I was then. I'm a lot more aligned and fulfilled and resonant and connected to the spheres, to the world, to the gods, to my own immanence now than I was. So I've been on a trajectory which one way or the other has moved toward that emergent light field, because I knew it was coming based on the prophetic visions that I'd had. I'd been taken into a full immersion experience of what was coming for this world, for humanity, for myself. And so it was easy for me to say, well, fuck it. I'm moving in this direction and I'm going to completely pull down the blinds and pay little to no attention to the negating, to the negativity, to the remonstrations of people, including family, saying, pulling one back and having certain expectations of one. So you learn to shed that. You learn to shed the expectations of others and continually lean into this mission, utterly blinded as a zealot in a sense with this mission. That was my journey and has been my journey. And to ask any of the thousands of people who've had either the fortune or misfortune to come into my sphere of influence, I'm not a particularly loving and kind man beyond a certain point. If anything seeks to threaten or destabilize the mission that I'm on, I become an absolute KUNT. I'm not a fun guy to cross. I do wield, in that sense, the sword of St. Michael, and I've always done it. And I've also been clad by the grace of the living God with the armor of God for a long time, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And it lasts so long as it lasts, but for sure, it has got me through thick and thin and through the valley of death without any question of doubt on a number of occasions. So here I am. I can only speak to my testament, speak to my witness, speak to my life. I am seeing this emergent field of geometry, this new geometry of light, and I know what it brings with it. It brings unbearable sufferance, unbearable reckoning to those who have chosen in the course of their own paths to forego their higher calling. And to those of you, and I doubt there's many of those folks listening into this, because they would not, by the laws of attraction, be frequency attuned to me. They'll think I'm a devil. They'll think that Sacha Stone is God, the devil's spawn, and a Vatican agent, or whatever, all the other shit that's thrown at me from people who are unresolved within themselves and can only explain the inexplicable by abusing it and by defiling and desecrating it. I'm a goodly, godly man. That's obvious to anyone who's frequency attuned to every word that comes out of my mouth, and every action I've deployed in this world has clearly been in service to my higher self, which is to say, to God, to humanity, to creation. But cross me and cross my path and diminish the flow and the form of this, and I will hack heads off. So I can only suggest that one's journey takes us into the new earth, whether we like it or not. The question is, are we able to withstand the blazing light that this new field represents? And it speaks to what we were talking about with in the conversation with George H. Lewis. This is the reckoning, and it's happening at the individual level, and each of us are being required to do this unbearable detox. I know I consistently have to do it. And every time you've done it, you think, well, Christ, that was awful, but I've done it. Now, surely it's all going to be good. And the next Tuesday, you're hit with another goddamn wave of something or other. Some other dystopian element enters your life and completely throws a curveball. And it keeps happening. And the more it happens, and the more that one is able to, in authenticity and in pure truth, stand up and dust yourself down and go, wow, whew, again, okay, right, and continue in pure truth, conducting that right action. To those of you who are listening to me, who know that you enact and embody this simple living principle of pure truth and right action in your own life, you will know exactly what I'm saying. And isn't it also true? And I speak to those of you as friends, as very close friends, attuned to the same frequency, because God knows we are the fellowship. We are the fellowship. And even although we don't know each other by name, and we're feeling each other, through the invisible realms, the fact of the matter is that we are the emergent fellowship. That is the fact of the matter. And we are, in that sense, dare I say it, the meek who are inheriting the earth.
Deb was mentioning, she said, given other stories I've heard about the collective power of many people being together and manifesting something, why are we not taking advantage of all of your members being on a symposium with you by doing a collective prayer, intention, manifestation of improvements to our world as a short segment of the symposium? Okay. I feel this could be a very powerful way of speeding along our ascension.
So no disrespect, but I'm going to ignore that question for the moment. I think it's a fairly shallow question, and please don't be offended. I'm not intending to offend, but I regard it as a shallow question. And I'll come back to why I think it's a shallow question. First, let me just apologize to the previous questioner. I never answered their question, which was connected to technology and human consciousness. So let me just round off quickly and acknowledge that earlier question and try to complete it. Technology is only ever a refraction and reflection of our consciousness. So I don't see it as a friend or foe in that sense. It is neither, and it is both. What is important is this emergent geometry of light and the degree to which the true technology, which is the human temple, this indigo angelic human temple, the degree to which this temple is able to receive, absorb, assimilate this new geometry of light, and therefore upgrade in its own immanence. So that is a process of software install and software reinstall that we don't even need to set our minds to. That's the point. The real technology is immanent. It's within the cells and the atomic, cellular, molecular strata. And all of that is self-fulfilling, self-arranging in accordance with the degree to which we are able to receive this new geometry of light. So don't overthink it. We don't need to. We just need, again, it comes back to that insanely simple algorithm. And the only thing I've ever really come up with that I believe is of any real consequence in this world is the simplest algorithm, which is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome is always connected to pure truth and right action in the living moment. And by the living moment, I mean the living moment, like this exact moment right now, which is the single most important moment in all of creation. This one right now. Oh, not that one, this one, not that one, this one. So that's how we keep ourselves attuned into supernature, to our true state of superconsciousness, which is the immanence, which is our divine matrix, is by never allowing time to codify reality for us. This is time, the 0 point time, the moment that we are fully immersed and fully connected right now, because this is the escape from the matrix, this perfect moment in time. This is the escape from grief, from sorrow, from the trial of separation, provided I am in a state of absolute witness right here, right now, this moment, not that moment, not the moment that's coming. So it always comes back to that. So the technology is a refraction and a reflection of our consciousness. Stay anchored in your consciousness alone. And by all means, do as I do. Pick up your telephone and use ChatGPT like your little bitch, like your poodle. Just use it. I do constantly now. But I don't see it as being any kind of existential threat. It can't be. I'm too fully contained in the field of my own living consciousness. All technology simply serves. Fast cars, I regard vehicles in the same way. I regard rocket ships, whether they're headed to Mars or otherwise, as the same thing. They're all a kind of somewhat distant refraction and reflection of what is immanent, what is inside, built inside. And we talk about rocket ships. Let's look at Merkaba, invoking Merkaba, the geometry of the soul, the superluminal geometry that we are able to instigate and initialize once we are frequency attuned to our superluminal genius. So that's coming. But it's only coming to those who can receive and assimilate those light forms. Then you'll be able to activate Merkaba probably within 5 to 7 years, by my reckoning, maybe a bit longer for some. But that's coming. The real technology is coming. It is moving into us, and just sense it and become attuned fully to this again. The superluminal sense of genius, of overflow, Kundalini rising that is on offer to every human being. Now, let me flip to the other question, that the somewhat shallow question. And again, I don't mean to be insulting, but I'll tell you why I say it's shallow. Because it's pretty bloody obvious that simply this conversation that we're having, it was my answers, right or wrong, are connected to a question that was asked. And we're on a journey here, and we're exploring through the living word. We're exploring through the living moment. And that is where our attention, our focus is. And right now, there are thousands of people who are looking in right now to this conversation. And I can tell you that 97%, possibly 99%, I know the algorithm, I know exactly what the equation is, incidentally. It is between 97 and 99%. It could even be 99.5% of people who are listening to this conversation right now are fully attuned. Their plasma projection is engaging in my plasma projection. We've created a luminal vector of awakening, of consciousness in action. It's not a fucking chant or a prayer session, prayer circle, or it is more than that. We're engaged in bending the envelope, in redeeming ourselves, reclaiming ourselves, uplifting ourselves, because we're engaged in the living word, the living moment. So to the person who asked the question, group meditations are delightful things. A group conversation where we're directly engaged proactively in exploring creation, exploring reality, exploring our divinity is far, far more powerful than a group meditation. The group meditations and the circles have served humanity so long as the adepts and the great gurus and yogis and sadhus had to inhabit the hilltops and the forests because they would have been burnt as heretics on the stake otherwise. There was a time, a dark time, where they needed to stay in the mountaintops and in the jungles and in the desert recesses. That time has changed. So the sadhus, the avatars, the saints amongst us have now come off the mountains and out of the forests and are now in the thick of it. And here we are. Here is where we find ourselves, in the midst of all of the white noise and the mindfuckery again of the status quo. This is where we find ourselves, and we still create that still point where we bring our sublime innocence, our sublime genius of inquiry and of dialogue and of transaction, true soulful transaction in to the same vector. This, I believe, is how we are bringing about the mechanics of ascension. So I believe that what we're doing here with the Lazarus Symposium by way of example is far more compelling, far more impactful than a group meditation.
Do we have time for one more?
Sure, I'm here.
Okay. So they say, you often speak about sovereignty as more than politics or activism, as something we can actually live and breathe each day. Could you share what sovereignty means to you on a human level and how people can practice it in real world situations like family, work, or community?
Yes, thank you for that question. And as you're speaking that question, a honeybee flies in from outside and circumambulates here me a dozen times. It's still doing it, and that's in field architectural terms means that the question is a very important one. But I'm not quite certain. I would like to throw that to you, Christy, before I wax lyrical on it. How would you, in 30 seconds, answer that question? I'm genuinely curious.
Oh, gosh. It's, I mean, for me, sovereignty, it's personal. I think it's personal to everyone. I have personal experiences with my children, with my family, where I felt there was overreach. And so for me, it was that I got to choose, the manifest destiny of my children and their health and well-being.
Beautiful.
And that no one was going to speak to me on that.
Beautiful.
So for me, that's what comes immediately.
I love that. And that's perfect. So what you've done is actually explained I think the highest expression of sovereignty is when we, in that sense, I'm not talking about self-immolation or self-sacrifice, but when we transpose our own, whatever it is that we want, we put that in abeyance to the greater, to the familial, to the other. And in your case, as the eternal mother, to the child, to the children, you have to do that, and you've done it. And I think that that's a beautiful way of beginning this little conversation on sovereignty. I would say, being as I am not a mother, and being as I am childless, but also being somebody who has now adopted every child on this planet as my own, and I'm desperately serious about that. I would suggest that sovereignty is, for me, the mechanics of sovereignty begin with irreverence. I've said this a number of times, and I'll just speak to it again. We have to learn the art of irreverence, and by that, what I mean, and it's almost as though I'm now moving into against my own philosophical and spiritual grain, because I am at the same time saying that we must regard everything as a sacrament in life. We must be reverential towards every human being, toward every creature, toward every relationship, toward every venue, every objective, every encounter, every experience we should approach reverentially as a sacrament. Every moment should be a sacrament and a reverential thing. Having said that, on the counterpoint, we first, in order to get to that state of grace, where we do regard every moment as reverential, we are required to first disidentify from false light and from the mind control, the cultural programming, and the religious programming, the spiritual malfunctioning of our status quo. And the best way to get there, in my view, is the art of irreverence, which is #fuck the government. And not seeing so clearly how foundationally wicked the Vatican is. All the monotheistic religions are foundationally wicked in extreme. Seeing how Yahweh, Jehovah, is foundationally evil. When you have hauled your mind out of its foot binding, when you have stepped back for one lucid moment and seen how all of the evils of the world, war, disease, and poverty have issued through and from the agency of those same monotheistic religions, which apparently are contained under the thrall of those monotheistic deities, which are constructs, elemental cloud intelligences, egregores that have been manifested in the hyperdimensional and subdimensional realms by billions and billions and billions of unresolved human souls, thrashing around in agony on the surface of the earth, entering into the synagogues and the temples and the churches and the temples, genuflecting and banging themselves on the ground and wailing at the heavens, never quite knowing what it is they're speaking to, but being told by words on parchment, words on pages, written and rewritten by conquerors and by all sorts of Babylonian priesthoods, doctrines and gospels, none of which are the sacrament, none of which are the living gospel, none of which speak to the mystical, true root and tradition of the Master, Jesus, or the Master Prophet, Muhammad, peace upon him, or Siddhartha Buddha, any of these great saints and prophets of old. So one needs to disidentify altogether from all monotheistic religious programming in entirety. You can't do it by degrees. You have got to put away the bells and the artifacts. You have got to step away from all idolatry. And you have got to, in that sense, disidentify from everything in the realm of the fictitious, which is the realm of the false light, which is this world as it has been for at least 13,000 years, since the great deluge, since the last time this earth plane passed through the semi-arc of the grand procession of the equinox and had an audit conducted upon it by the Atman, by the highest authority in the spheres, and was found wanting, which is why the world was rendered into a great deluge, sacrificial waters, and the great Noah and his ark and all these other great deluge creation myths emerged as a result. And so in the last 13,000 years, which has been a galactic sleep cycle in that sense, we have been very befuddled, very lost to self. And now, as the age of Aquarius dawns and this great libation from the heavens emerges with this new geometry of light to those of us who are standing simply in pure truth and right action in the living moment in our lives, to the best of our mortal ability, we are the ones who will receive that grace now. And it is the interconnectedness of each of us and our sufferance and the way in which we have transmuted our individual personal sufferance into service to others over service to self. That becomes the genesis point of the morphogenetic upshift, this inordinate waveform that issues from the collective human heart and then projects into the spheres, the new becoming. And we marry our mortal reckoning with this emergence and anchor heaven to earth. In that way, we are the technology that brings about the ascension spiral, not just for us lowly humans, but for all of creation in this particular temporal universe. So the onus, the responsibility that we carry is at the individual level. I am responsible for the entire known universe. Indeed, the universe does not exist without me. How could it? Because if I shut my eyes, it's no longer there. If I perish, it is no longer there. So in simple terms, we are each of us a fractal of the whole of the Alpha and the Omega, and we must own it. We must know it. So irreverence is my answer. learning the art of irreverence in order to become truly reverential. Don't be afraid of tearing up the forms and the envelopes that come to your house from the government, from the municipality, from the IRS, and so on and so forth. They are illicit, illegal, they are criminal actions, they are treasonous actions being leveled against you. There are solutions out there. Set up a family trust right now. Make all of your family beneficiaries of the trust. Create a family church. Appoint everyone in the family as bishops. Put daddy or mummy or granny as the pope. You can do that. You can emulate the Catholic Church. It's what they've done for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's what the City of London has done, the Crown of England. It's what Washington District of Columbia does. It's what the black nobility do in their Basel, Switzerland stronghold of the Bank of International Settlements. These are privately owned and controlled family trusts set within principalities, decreed under their own law. So simply replicate what they've done. I've done that with the New Earth Nation Coalition. Check it out. We're a cluster of irrevocable universal trusts. I am the Pope, and I govern as the presiding elder over my kingdom, so to speak. Come at me. Come at me. And I just invite people to consider that irreverence is also using your brain and learning how to disentangle from the Saturnian status quo at every level. I'm going to leave it at that and hope that that answer gave some satisfaction.
Yeah, perfect. I think it's actually a good place to wrap.
Very good. Well, thank you, Christy. Appreciate that. And I will turn to the audience and say thank you for joining me. I think we've got a bigger audience now than we had in the first half hour. And again, I would invite you. Oh, my Sue Wong is watching. Hi, darling. I'll give you a call later this afternoon. Thank you again for letting me use your beautiful palace here in Los Feliz. Friends, I'm going to be loitering around California for the next couple of weeks. I've got a few very important meetings coming up, and I will then be heading to Africa again to pick up our incredible project there, which is going great guns. And I will drop in on the 11th of November. I'll still be in sunny California, and I will drop in with David Sarita and with George Lewis, and we'll bring in a couple of remote viewers and do some incredible remote viewing on this 3i Atlas phenomenon. We'll also bring in some hardcore math and astrophysics and science into that panel. And we're going to do it again just as a bonus thing to everyone, all of our Lazarus community and beyond. So thanks for joining me today, as Christy's going to take over the helm, and I will see you anon. Hey, Lazarus, alien goddess, UFOs, AI, and the goddesses of ascension with Joanna Kujawa. I think I got the name right for the first time in many months that I've known this amazing woman. We welcome Dr. Joanna today, scholar, seeker, and fearless spiritual detective, whose new book, Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension, invites us